What is up, besties? I am annoyed because I was sitting here and I had started this video and everything was off to a great start. And then I glanced over and I saw that there was no sound being recorded. And I wasn't sure when it stopped recording. And I did not want to get into the editing phase of this and be like, oh my goodness, there's no sound for giant chunks of this video. And then so I'm just going to start over. Let's try this again from the top. Let me make myself smaller here so I did this in the last one too, and it really bothers me that I just did it again. Video capture, making me smaller. Again, we're just going to hope and pray that I don't lose sound during the recording of this. But first things first, I'm not surprised that Frederick Bachman was the runaway favorite here. As we can see, Monty did not read any of the books in this category. And so I will say this, Layla Motley sneaking their way into this category is crazy to me. I don't understand, and I know that Oprah Winfrey, of all people, I guess she has two authors in this category, right? Isn't Ocean Vuong is like also right there. Nightcrawling was just so bad. Like, it was a viscerally bad book that I'm surprised that it got any kind of recognition, any kind of love, any kind of support, any kind of like, oh my goodness, people need to read this. People need to experience the story, to the point that Layla Motley was able to con their way into another book deal. Like, to me, that is actually crazy, let alone into something like the Goodreads Choice Awards. Crazy work to me. There are people in this category like Ellen Hildebrand, Jojo Moyes, Sarah McLean, even Ocean Vuong, Chimamanda sneaking their way into this in the same year that fucking J.K. Rowling managed to sneak into the nominations. Also crazy to me. So like, part of me wants to be surprised, but part of me is like also like, I guess I'm not. But Layla Motley to me is just is crazy to see her here. The rest of this category, again, not surprised. Not even not surprised. It's I have no feeling, no emotions. As I was saying before the sound stopped going out, like it went out on me, I've not really spent a lot of time this year reading a lot of new release fiction and keeping up with new releases outside of the authors that I had read from previously. So like, new to me authors and their like new books, unless I had requested it on NetGalley and I was trying to be a good person and get back to that and like read that and engage with that material, I've spent a lot of the year just like didn't know this came out. And so I'm not surprised that, Frederick Bachman put out a book and almost 60,000 people voted for it over the second place winner. I've never heard of Wild Dark Shore, but even that having 60,000 more votes than the next, than the third place, I would not have predicted that. In historical fiction, I'm not surprised with this winner either. Atmosphere winning handedly over the competition. Obviously, people really love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think this is definitely a Taylor Jenkins Reid that I've heard the least about. Even with Carrie Soto, even though people did not love Carrie Soto, and I felt like I was in an island by myself trying to defend that piece of fiction, at least I was seeing people talk about it. And again, I've been kind of checked out from the bookish space. Again, if it wasn't happening on my Patreon, if I wasn't the person engaged, like reading it, I had just been swiping away from most book conversations this year, just because it was not really a space that I really wanted. I don't want to say I really didn't want to be in it if I spent all year making bookish content. I don't know if I can say that. I think that might be kind of a bit of, not even kind of, it's a big lie. That'd be a big lie. But even in I'm trying to scroll past things, I was never scrolling past somebody talking about Atmosphere. So I guess I'm surprised that almost 300,000 people, 250,000 people voted for it, in that like a lot of people are voting for it and giving it best historical fiction, but like, are the girlies reading and engaging and promoting it? That part to me is feeling a little bit lost in translation. That feels lost in translation to me personally. In the mystery thriller category, this is probably the first genuine surprise. Obviously, I'm aware that Holly Jackson is a YA staple in the mystery thriller genre, but the fact that she was able to beat out some of these people did surprise me. I do think, though, the fact that Frida McFadden had 3 books in the preliminary voting, and then I think she still had 2 books in the final voting, did kind of hurt her. Now, obviously, somebody really might have liked The Crash or The Intruder more than The Tenant, and there's no saying that between those 2 other books, which is what, 16 and 14, if we just round those both up, around that, there's a 15,000, and that up to 17,000, that's what, 32,000 votes. I don't know if those 32,000 people would have voted for The Tenant, but you could maybe make the argument that 7,000 of them might have. It could have been a lot closer in the vote total. So while the Holly Jackson is a big gag to me, I do think that Frida, I don't say was hamstrung by the fact that her vote was split, but I don't think the split vote helped her. Didn't Geneva Rose, did they also have two? They didn't. I thought they did for some reason. My bad. Oh, okay, good. I thought I had like completely fucked up. Onto the romance. I'm happy with this. Oh, I'm really happy with this. Emily Henry's Great Big Beautiful Life being number one, and Abby Jimenez's Say Me or Remember Me number two. Besties, let me make myself a little bit bigger. Let me come on over to OBS real quick. So one of the very first things that got me to go and make a TikTok was Say or Remember Me. The girlies found out that Abby Jimenez writes on her phone, that she sits on her phone and she types out these books and then she edits. I think she doesn't edit on her phone. I think she does edit at a computer. But regardless, they found out that she was drafting books on her phone. And they were like, you can tell. The books are bad. You can tell. It's bad. You could tell that somebody put this on their phone and they wrote it. And that's when I knew that TikTok was fundamentally an unserious. I mean, I already knew there was an unserious place, but that was before I had engaged with it. So when I come onto the platform and I'm seeing people like, oh yeah, she's bad because the phone makes her bad. Besties, pen and paper, a typewriter, like bad writing to be bad writing. Like it don't matter the medium that we are using. Because eventually, I'm going to tell you this, besties, it got off her fucking phone and somebody in the process was on a desktop computer and they made it work, you know? They made it work. And I think that Say You Remember Me is a top tier romance. Great Big Beautiful Life and Say You Remember Me are definitely going to be featured in my best books of the year video. Like 100%. Say You Remember Me was my first Abby Jimenez. And I do get some of the complaints. You know, I do think that if you are the kind of a romance reader that wants easy breezy beautiful, that doesn't I get everything. Everything that could have gone wrong in that relationship was going wrong in that relationship. Some of the things about that relationship were a little bit repetitive. But besties, not hour, because obviously it's a long book. But I remember staying late at work when I was at the hotel and I was listening to this book and it got me through that shift, besties. It got me through that shift and I was looking for my 13th reason. It was just there. Say You'll Remember Me is that girl. Great Big Beautiful Life. I did not listen to it in one day. I don't think. I listened to it over a couple of days maybe. But that was also just so good. It was such a good story. And again, I've seen people complain about that one too. Oh, it's not even a romance. It's not even this. It's not even that. To me, I said this after I finished Beach Read Behind the Paywall and I was ranking the Emily Henry finally. Great Big Beautiful Life and Beach Read are low-key the same. I don't say low-key the same book, but they definitely, I think, are for the same reader. And I think that the sort of experiences, the way that the relationship develops is very similar in both books. And so when I see people come out here and try and look me in my eyes and tell me that Beach Read was a romance and Great Big Beautiful Life was not a romance, it has to be fucking worms for brains. We have had to have lost the plot somewhere because Great Big BBL, I think I added too many B's in there. Yeah, I said big and then BB. So my bad. Great Big Beautiful Life. She's got easily first 5-star Emily Henry read. So good. Deep End was fine. The Favorites was I voted for The Favorites because I knew that Great Big and So You'll Remember Me didn't need my votes. The Favorites is also easily one of my favorite books of the year. I read this back in January, so I have talked about it in that January video that I made. But this was so good. I remember I listened to it on a whim. I walked to the movie theater. It was early days in January. Might have been even New Year's Day or so. And I was walking to the movie theater. I was going to go watch it. I don't even remember what I was going to go see. But I remember I was walking to the movie theater. It was cold outside. And so I was listening to this book about ice dancers. And then I remember I was at the movie theater so late. And it was dark when I was coming home. And again, I was still listening to this book about the ice dancers. And I was having a great time listening to it. It is so good. I've also seen people discuss that The Favorites is not a romance. Again, I understand that there is a lot happening here, but again, besties, the book would not exist if you ripped out that relationship. Like, you rip out that romance in that book, and what do you have? You have nothing. Like, you have a half decent story about, you know, an ice dancing pair that went through some shit. But what makes that book as compelling as it is the fact that those ice dancers were fucking. They were in a relationship. Like, I'm real sorry that, you know, people are out here writing layers and complexity and emotions and side plots into their romances, but some people like a little something to chew on in their books. Like, I don't think that is a crime, and I think that this idea that we need to remove everything from a romance besides the fucking, besides people, I want to fuck you, you want to fuck me, together we're a happy family. Let's be serious, besties. Anything else on this list over here on this that I wanted to talk about? Problematic Summer Romance I thought was actually awful. I thought that was actually god tier awful. Like, Raggedy Ann. Can't get enough. I Can't Believe is a good book just based on the 2 prior installments in that series, but I haven't read it, so I won't make any comments. I will say that I did think it was very strange that this. Let me make myself smaller again. But that's not what I want to do. Behind the Paywall, I said I did think that it was very strange that there's not a single noted like queer romance on this list. And that's not to say that, you know, First Time Caller could be bi for bi. I think Ali Hazelwood has talked about her characters are somewhere on the queer spectrum every time that she writes a book. I don't know what's happening in the Gingerbread Bakery. I don't know. Again, Taurus season could be queer in some capacity. There could be a queer element to any of these books, right? But I just think it's very weird. Not a single visibly queer romance on the cover, whether it be a sapphic romance, whether it be a male romance, like nothing of that was here at all. And I don't think one is even over here in the romantasy category. Onyx Storm demolishing the competition, I'm not surprised. What did gag me the first time I did, only 9,000 people. People really don't like Silverleaf. I had a fun time with that. I'm not gonna lie, besties. I'm happy that Irresistible Urge got more votes than Rose and Chains. I think this is awful. Also, I didn't say this publicly. I think Alchemized is a... Let me second. Gotta make myself big again. So we can... It's even gonna be the first time that we get to talk about Alchemized. I think Alchemized is a horrid book. I think Alchemized is not worth the paper that it's printed on. I think that Sinlin Yu running around talking to the people, trying to make a claim that they went into their fan work and they recreated it, you know, and they went in. That book makes absolutely no sense if you have never a day in your life read Manacled. And here's the thing. I really want to be on the side. This is a very nuanced, you know, textured conversation that I think you could have about taking fan works and reworking them into traditional publishing. I think you can even have a conversation about marketing this now traditionally published book so heavily on the fact that it was a fan work. There's a lot of, you know, nuances here. But I think for me personally, at the end of the day, I do understand specifically with Sinlin Yu, again, because I spent the better part of the year actually on TikTok seeing these people in their natural habitat being the weirdos that they are. But if I were Sinlin Yu, and a decade ago, 5 years ago, 30 seconds ago, if I sat at my desk in my apartment and I was, you know, tip-tapping away on my keyboard and I wrote a little fan fiction that was really long and it was really, you know, all these things. And then I saw people on the internet printing out my work. I'd be like, oh my goodness, I'm so happy that you want to have a physical copy on your shelf. But then I saw people on Etsy selling it. I saw people creating other like third-party websites to sell it, you know, charging people for work that they didn't make. And I had given this to the world for free. And then a literary agent comes in my inbox and is like, hey, I would like to work with you to get this traditionally published. And then I get a publishing contract for hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of dollars. Absolutely. There's a lot of conversation we can have, but I think that we would not be in the position that we are in if the weirdos on the internet were not buying and selling and making a profit off of this fan fiction. Like, if you weirdos could have just added the files to your Kindle, to your Kobo, to your phone and kept the pushing, I don't think we would have a situation in the Goodreads Choice Awards in the year of our Lord 2025 where 3 Hermione fanfictions that were advertised and published and, marketed as Hermione fanfiction I don't think we'd be here. Like, I truly don't believe that we would be here. And I say that even though we have already been through the Kylo Ren and Rey, the Reylo era, we're still kind of low key in the Reylo era. Like, even today, you can scroll through book threads. I would assume you can scroll through book Twitter, but I'm not really on book Twitter these days. But I see people on threads all the time talking about the new fan fiction they're writing, talking about my next book is going to be this fan fiction. So, like, I don't think we would ever really be out of the fan fiction woods, but we would not be in a position where we are right now if you weirdos could have just read your fan fiction like normal people as a fucking PDF file. So if the people weren't out here, binding and selling, and y'all could have just been gifting. If you've been gifting, but you wanted to be like, it's my new side hustle. Weirdos. Anyway, all that to say, Alchemize, I think, does not escape Manacled. And I think that's kind of where the story falls apart for me, is that you read this really long book that doesn't really actually want to, I think, at least as a piece of traditional media, maybe as a fan work, you really were getting these interesting insights into the complex thoughts that the narrative prompts. But as a piece of original fiction, it's non-existent. There are so many superfluous side characters that the reader has no attachment to, that Helena has attachment to, that the Draco Malfoy man has attachment to, though it doesn't make any fucking sense in the context that it exists in now. And so you spend a lot of the time in the book, at least I did, trying to kind of like guesstimate who this character was supposed to be in the fan fiction, so then I could then understand how I was supposed to feel about them in this book. And to me, that was not necessarily a satisfying experience. I'm also just over the alchemy bullshit. I think at that point, that was like the second alchemy book that I had read. And to be honest with you, besties, I was totally fucking lost as to what the alchemy was even supposed to be doing. And I was just like, this is really convoluted. And I understand that maybe in your notes, you really thought you would come up with something special. You were like, oh, this is like the furthest thing from a Harry Potter magic system. Like, it's going to work. It's going to be like, I'm eating down. And besties, you were not eating down. Alchemize to me is horrid. And I think there's a lot of goodwill based on the fact that so many of you guys read that as Manacled. And it's not that I think that Cinlin Yu is untalented. I think there were, and I said this in my Goodreads review, I think there were genuine moments of that book where I could understand the promise. I could understand why the literary agent like wanted to represent them. But it's just like at some point in this process, I think that somebody needed to be pulled aside. Maybe before they started selling fucking film and TV rights for 7 figures. Maybe before then. But at some point, someone needed to pull Cinlin Yu to the side and be like, girl, this isn't it. This is actually shit from a butt. Like, and so I'm gagged and gooped and gathered that this somehow managed to find its way into the second place voting and then win a category later on. So those are my thoughts on Alchemize, Onyx Storm, whatever, Mate, whatever. The rest of these, Silverleaf I had a silly fun time with. I'm definitely going to be reading, what is it, Broken Dove? I'll be reading it. I'm going to find out. Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, I think, is the most successful of the Hermione works. And it's my understanding that the Irresistible Urge is not even reworked fan fiction. It's my understanding that Bridget Knightley's other superly long titled thing is still up on AO3 today. And so if it's up on AO3, then it's my understanding that it's not reworked. And this just takes, a Hermione-esque person, a Draco-esque person, and throws them into a new situation. And I think that this worked the best. As a piece of original fiction, I think Irresistible Urge works the best. I think that it's a crime to be so low down in the votes. And Rose and Chains, I think that was weird. Rose and Chains, I think, is the worst. I hated Our Vicious Oaths, besties. But listen, before I read this book, I really thought that I was down for the girls. Okay, I thought I was down for the books that were a little bit explicit, a little bit, like we just want to have fun, smutty times. But Annie Davenport cannot write. They cannot write. This is the fourth book from them I've read. Okay. And I feel like I've read from them in a variety of genres. I read their debut, which was an adult science fiction fantasy with blood magic kind of things. And that was, you could argue that it was tampered with because it was supposed to be a trilogy. Then it got cut into a duology. And the second book was just awful. It was utterly unreadable. You can't make this shit up. So I was like, okay, that's bad. And then earlier this year, I think it was in October, my patrons voted for me to read Love Spells Trouble. I vlogged it over there. It was horrid. That was a YA story, and that one just horrid might be a little bit strong for what that was. It just wasn't for me. Like it was kind of fine, but also just like it just was needlessly convoluted, and I didn't necessarily understand the world structure that we had created. And to me, the world was supposed to be a little bit more simpler because of the YA story. And I was like, I've read your adult work where you have like these really complicated worlds, and it was very easy to understand. But in that one, it was nonsense to me. So it's like, this isn't for me. But I thought that like maybe if I actually was, a young adult person, I would have gotten a little bit more out of it. And so I went into Our Vicious Oaths with a little bit more of an open mind. And this was just a bad book. Like beginning to end, front to back, there was nothing good about it. Our main character was unserious. Her love interest was deeply unserious. The situation that they found themselves in was just stupid. And at every turn, there was just, I swear to God, there was a point in this book where I swear it was like 2 just straight chapters of intercourse. And I was just like, I really love intercourse as much as the next person. And I'm really happy when people get to have intercourse in their books and they are like living their best lives and enjoying the company of their partner. But at some point, I was like, ma'am, isn't there supposed to be like a war happening? Like, aren't you like in fear for, isn't something supposed to be occurring in this book? And it just did not materialize. The only good thing about Our Vicious Oaths is that it's a standalone, but even that I fear is too much. So I'm not surprised that it's dead last in the voting. And for once, I 100% agree that that's where it should be. I will say this. I'm pretty sure that its first book, Bride, was in the regular romance category. And I'm pretty sure A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping's first book was in the fantasy category. And so this whole like wishy-washy, where are we putting these things, I think is deeply unserious and yet another reason we don't need romantasy here. But I'm pretty sure if we had Onyx Storm winning in the fantasy category, the girlies would be rioting. But what do I know? As for what actually won fantasy, I'm gagged that it was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. And I'm actually gagged that Alchemy of Secrets is as high as it is. Alchemy of Secrets was another silly fun time, guys. I was fully prepared to hate Alchemy of Secrets, particularly after I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy and was brutally attacked. I think I read that in a vlogmas 2 years ago, maybe a year, I forget when. And it might have been not even a vlogmas, it might have been a situation where I was reading it for the patrons, but I was kind of attacked by how that first book was so good and then it just went downhill for me. And so Alchemy of Secrets, to be honest with you, I only listened to it because Sutton Foster did the audiobook. And who can deny listening to Sutton Foster? Not me. I listened to it and it was a fun time. But I did not expect it to be 4th place at all. And I did not expect Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil to take it. I really thought that finally Brandon Sanderson was going to get to win this. I really thought that, maybe he was going to, but this man didn't even stand a chance. Didn't even stand a fucking chance between V.E. Schwab, R.F. Kwong, and Stephanie Garber. Although shout out to Stephanie Garber, she is up here top 4 using her full name. No initials. As for the rest of I guess I'm kind of surprised that James Islington is where he is at number 6, given the fact that this voting started before people could even read that book, most people. The Raven Skull I've heard good things about. Travis Baldry, I think it's time for him to wrap it up. Marie Lou's Red City, the girlies are really liking that on TikTok, so I don't know what's happening, if people are enjoying that other places, but I have seen really good things about this. But overall, I think this, for the most part, this category has fallen about where I thought it was, but again, Alchemy of Secrets, I did not expect to do as well as it did, but I love that for me. Also, Catabasis, I'm happy that it's up here, but again, I would have had that in the romantasy category. If we're going to have romantasy, I think it should have been over there. Science fiction, I don't think I'm going to have anything to say about. The Compound, that was a book club book from one of the girlies. I want to say it was a Jenna pick. Can't trust Jenna Hagerbush, but, her book club does be moving copies, and then she does usually pick crowd pleasers, and a little bit usually more of like a literary bent, so maybe there's some good writing in the compound. I don't know why I'm trying to click one to read because I don't. Horror was another one where I was kind of surprised, kind of not surprised. I did think that Buffalo Hunter Hunter was going to take it. I thought Stephen Graham Jones was finally going to get to have his moment, but looks like it was a 1-2 punch between Grady and Stephen. But I did not have any money on Stephen King. Like, I know that it's Stephen King. He's a big name. It's, fucking Stephen King. But didn't think that was going to happen. We Love You, Bunny is higher than I thought it was going to be. To be honest with you, I thought that You Weren't Meant to Be Human or Buffalo Hunter Hunter was going to be the winner. But, you can't get them all right. Debut novel. This is where I probably should have ranted about fucking Alchemized. Alchemized demolished, but also Alchemized was a work of genre fiction. Is any other genre fiction? Okay, that's a fantasy moment. There's like sirens in that. So there are like at least 2, and I think Merge was just in the science fiction category. So like I guess there were, but I do think that Alchemized had the edge because it was a genre fiction book. And it already had so many votes, so many shooters, if you will, in the romantasy category that I'm not surprised that it actually did win debut, but I've ranted about it enough. The audiobook category bothers me just because, like, I don't think the Audible exclusives should be here. Yeah, I don't think they should be here. I don't have a lot to say about who did win this. Obviously, I voted for Great Big Beautiful Life here. I'm surprised that Onyx Storm won, but I do think people listen to that series a little bit more, particularly after the Iron Flame debacle, where there were so many typos and unreadable shit. I'm not surprised that Sunrise on the Reaping one. I guess I can make myself big here too. Oh, Oathbound did a lot better than I thought it would. I mean, I know that it only has 30,000 votes, so that's like literally 10 times less than the one that won, but there was no other option here but Sunrise on the Reaping. Again, I did read Sunrise on the Reaping. I don't think I read it for a Patreon vlog, but I know that I read it this year, and I didn't like it. Like, to me, Sunrise on the Reaping, and I felt crazy at the time, because at the time, everybody was like, yeah, this is so good. Since then, I have seen a couple of people who have come out and been like, it was fine. But to me, the problem with Sunrise on the Reaping is that it doesn't give you any, I won't say that it doesn't give you new information, because it does give new information. To me, the information that it does give and the information that is new just does not feel like it, that actually like makes sense. Like, I just think that it is deeply unserious. And also, like, I would take this back. There's one thing I like about Sunrise and the Reaping, and the thing that I like about it is I do appreciate that it shows the resistance in Panem, 25 years, right? Because it's the 50th Hunger Games, right? Is Hamish's. So I like the fact that you got to see like 25 years, 24 years before the rebellion kind of had like anything like big happen again. And so I like this idea of like, okay, there are always these little seeds of resistance, and in the past it didn't work out, and in the future it can. Like, I did think that was like a really good message to show that, change is something that takes time, because when you're reading the Hunger Games, it's like, okay, from book 1 to Mockingjay, it's like, oh wow, well, she just did this shit, overnight. And so I did appreciate that the added context that Sunrise and the Reaping added in that way. But at the same time, like, when I was reading it and I was reading about all of the shit that they were editing out of Hamish's games, it's like, first they were already deeply redacting, and I guess that you could make an art, but this is the thing, like, I don't think that the things that happen in like this or Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I don't think it makes the world in Panem in the Hunger Games or Catching Fire or Mockingjay feel like, oh yeah, like this is like a well thought out thing. I think that like you can retroactively be like, oh yeah, like see, this is why that happened there. But I think that at the time of writing those 3 books, like that was not necessarily the reasoning or why, like what Susan Collins had in mind. So like this idea that we could heavily redact, Lucy's games, and then at the 50th quarter quell, we're also going to like heavily edit this shit. And then our whole system and everything is going to get brought down by fucking Katniss and her fucking berries. You know what I mean? No, sorry. I'm done. But again, I'm already a person that didn't love the Hunger Games to begin with. Like, I enjoy the movies. I think they work better as a visual thing than like as a series of books. And so I have a respect and appreciation for the series as a whole. But overall, like I just thought this was a deeply unserious text. Oathbound, I just think is bad. I don't think that Tracy Dion is a good author. So yeah, Tracy Dion, I'm sorry. I think your books are bad. I'm not sorry about that part. Young adult fiction. I had no idea I was going to take this one. I do think that The Thrashers was bad. I think Julie Soto really struck out this year. Also, I think it's really great that we had the Survivor dies at the end and the Sophie Gonzalez book. So we got queer representative and they were roommates. I think it was a queer story. You found Oliver's a queer story. There was a lot of queerness over here. Say a Little Prayer, I wouldn't say is a queer story, but don't hold me to that. So there's queer representation in the YA categories, but none in the adult categories. And then as for like nonfiction, memoir, and historiography, I had nothing to do with those. So we're not even going to look at them today. We're not even going to look at them. Normally, I would talk about what was I looking for? I would talk about the Michael Connelly story that I read today. Just know that I finished Michael Connelly. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow because at this point, it's already been 33 minutes. This video is long enough. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the Michael Connelly. It'll give me a day. I'll get to sleep on it, because besties, there were so many twists and turns. There were so many conspiracies and tangents. But tomorrow we'll talk about them. And I think I'm going to take a break and listen to, I have tomorrow off. Even better. So tomorrow we'll get to catch up. I might read something, but because I have this little tucked away, this little book discussion in my back pocket, we might just talk about that tomorrow. And then go back to the reading on Saturday when I have to go back to work. That might be what we do. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to me yap about the Goodreads Choice Awards. Until tomorrow and until next time. Bye.